work on your portfolio, send emails to studios, study anatomy, study perspective, do live drawing, learn color theory, don't forget your personal project, study anatomy, study perspective, draw a box. Oh my god, it's Inktober already. Read up on art history, 100 hit challenge, draw this in your style. What is my style? No, not November, study anatomy, study perspective. Are you feeling overwhelmed? You may have art block, and you might not even know it. We've all experienced it at some point to some degree. A feeling of exhaustion, a lack of motivation, the inability to create something new, every idea seems stale, being unable to physically bring yourself to do it. It's a nebulous feeling of exhaustion and cynicism. And this art block thing, it hangs over us like a dark cloud. It's an ominous presence that seems to slowly but surely creep up on us, and we try to avoid it. We do everything we can to hold it at bay because art blocks are the worst. But I think that's unfair, and I think the phenomenon of art blocks have been unnecessarily vilified. I think art blocks are a natural part of making art. So what do we do when we get art block? Today I want to share with you what I do when I get art block, and why doing nothing might be the most important thing you can do. So let's talk about the creative cycle and what that looks like. This is where the art block lies. This graphic represents your mental state throughout a single project, but I think that applies to your general creative energy as well. Firstly, you have to recognize that you're in the shit zone of the creative cycle, or if you are at all. The thing is, art block isn't a clinical condition. There's no official diagnosis or a set list of symptoms. So it's hard for us to define, let alone identify what art block is, because it may not be art block at all. It may be something else entirely, because this creative process, this cycle, doesn't just exist in a vacuum. There could be external stressors contributing to this feeling. Stress at work, financial pressures, wife ran away, dog left you for your best friend. You have a life outside of your sketchbook, and whatever's happening out there can and will affect your ability to create. So while you might feel like you're in the art block stage of the cycle, you might not be at all. Maybe it's nothing to do with art at all. And look, I'm not saying your life has to be perfect before you can start being creative. Just being able to recognize that, oh, I'm not creatively burnt out, I'm just emotionally exhausted from having to deal with my boss all day, is the most important thing you can do. You don't have art block, you're just behind on rent. Okay, now that we've gotten all that life stuff out of the way, let's start talking about the creative side. Oh, wait, you can't. That's not how that works. Let's talk about more life stuff. You want to draw, but you can't, or won't. So why draw at all? Why bother? No, really, why? Unless it's your job and you literally have no choice in order to put food on the table, why draw at all? If drawing is causing you all this negative emotions and you're beating yourself up about it and you feel inadequate, what's the point? Odds are making art isn't always completely a negative experience for you. There's a reason you make art. Odds are it's a pretty good reason, whether it's the feeling of mastery or the pride you feel after finishing a piece. It's what's drawing you over and over again back to making art. I think it's important to remind ourselves why we do what we do. It's easy to forget, and I don't know, there's something about our brains that like latches itself onto the negative stuff more easily than the positive stuff. We forget and we end up chasing other extrinsic motivations, money, likes, the validation of others. But that's not going to work in the long run, and when we arrive at this low point in the cycle, it just feels extra bad, and worse, we prolong it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against drawing for the sake of drawing. There is value in muscle memory and committing to the practice, but that shouldn't be the only way to draw. It's really easy to get caught up in the grind and lose yourself in the frenzy of social media, like, oh my god, look at all the art everyone's making, I need to keep up. And we chase this dragon looking for the next trend to hop onto, and in the process we lose ourselves. We forget what it is we're trying to do, let alone why we do it. Picture your creativity as separate from yourself. Now, picture it like a device. And as you use your creativity, you're using its battery. And eventually, once you use it enough, it runs out of battery and shuts down. Now, if that were your phone, you plug it into a charger. You don't just leave it on the table and then wake up the next morning expecting it to be fully charged. You have to do something, you have to plug it in. Yet we don't do that with our creativity. We just leave it on the shelf and then expect it to recharge itself somehow. Now let's talk about the creative side. What can we do to recharge our creative battery? The first and most obvious thing is something that we all do already. It's consuming media. Creativity doesn't exist in a vacuum. You have to feed it. By giving it input, we increase the chances of outputting something ourselves. There is, however, a key difference between passively consuming media and actively using it as creative food. The key word here being passive. And that's something I think you have to be really honest with yourself about. Are you just binging Code Geass for the third time because you have nothing better to do? Or are you watching it because you want to be inspired by the character designs? Going into something with an active mindset, almost like studying it, is the key difference. I find that with screen media, so games, TV shows, movies, it's a lot easier to fall back into that passive mindset because I think my brain just doesn't have to do that much work. So I prefer non-screen stuff like graphic novels, books, audiobooks, music. The analogy I like to use is like an appetizer before the meal. That little bit of food just gets your appetite going. Same here with media, it just helps you kickstart your creative engine and helps you build up the momentum, as long as you're thinking about it in the right way. And it doesn't just have to be consuming media, you can also take the time to watch a tutorial and learn a new skill. Sometimes the acquisition of a new skill or technique, no matter how small, can be the seed to motivating you into wanting to make art again. This is a mech that I've designed for a tutorial in conjunction with Blender Secrets. It's a tutorial on hard surface modeling and more specifically modeling this mech. In it is a step-by-step process on how you can model my mech in Blender. It's very beginner friendly, so if you don't know where to start and this sounds interesting to you, you might want to check it out. There's this idea or technique in psychology called cognitive reframing. The idea is that by reframing a person's point of view, by changing their perspective, it can lead to tangible changes in their mental state. So while the circumstances remain unchanged, there's an overall improvement in well-being. And I think that's really cool. So how does this relate to ARTBOOK? Well, it's already happening because I hope by now you've understand that ARTBOOK is just one part of the cycle. It's a natural part of the process. There's nothing wrong with you. I used to struggle a lot with ARTBOOK. Whenever I couldn't draw anything, I would beat myself up and I would get overly emotional about it. Like, oh my god, I'm such a fraud. I'll never draw anything good again. Like, what are you doing? You're so bad. And this stress wasn't helping. It just made things worse and prolonged my art block. I thought that by being hard on myself for being lazy, I would whip myself up into shape and hopefully draw something good. And I've done this for so long that I've had no choice but to reconcile with this part of the process. I wasn't being lazy, I just needed to rest. I needed to recharge. Consequently, my art block periods have progressively gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. Or at least it feels that way because I'm just less stressed about it. And from the outside, nothing has functionally changed. I play video games, I read Hellboy Seed of Destruction for the 50th time. I do all the same things that I used to do, but just by thinking about it differently, as rest instead of laziness, has made a world of difference. Not all rest is equal. Now there's a concept you can borrow from physical training called active rest, or in weightlifting terms, it's called taking a deload. Now, active rest happens in between blocks of training where you would take a day or a week off from your regular scheduled training to recover from the physical fatigue of physical exertion. But instead of a full rest where you sit around doing nothing, active rest includes some low impact movement like taking a walk, stretching, and just general physical exercise way below your threshold of exertion. So the key difference in an active rest is that you're not completely idle. A, this helps you maintain a general level of sharpness. B, it includes novelty into your routine. After like training for 6 weeks straight, you gotta take a break. C, it helps you maintain your workout routine, which can be hard to get back into after a long period of rest. These principles from active rest can be translated to work for us. A lower level of activity can mean, maybe like figure drawing for like 10 to 30 minutes a day. It's not that you stop drawing entirely. You can just do it at a much lower intensity, even if it means just drawing a couple of boxes or a quick doodle. Novelty is once again a form of input. Now for artists, novelty might mean actually doing some physical exercise.
Go touch grass, this is your last chance.
Novelty can mean taking a 5-week solo trip to Morocco, or it could mean trying out this new coffee shop in your neighborhood. It could also mean trying out new art forms. Try poetry, try pottery, try touching grass. And let's not forget the importance of a routine. I remember one specific period of art block where it was like, I binged Legends of the Galactic Heroes for like a week straight, and I came out of that period feeling worse than before. Like I wasn't energized or rested or recharged, and it was so hard to get back into the swing of things. I just completely lost the habit of drawing. Not having a routine completely shut down the momentum that I was supposed to build up during this rest period. More than anything, I feel like actively trying, actively doing stuff, it just feels a lot less hopeless. It's more motivating to at least feel like something is happening, and that can snowball you bouncing back into the next phase of the creative cycle. Being able to take a step back to be able to just think things through like this is not only a useful skill, it's vital to having a long and sustainable art career. Inspiration is not enough. We can't always rely on something as mercurial as lightning in a bottle. My ultimate goal is to live a purposeful life. To the best of my abilities, do things on my own terms. I'm not there yet, maybe it's futile, but I try. And that's how I like to think about my art. I want to make what I like and like what I make. That takes some degree of introspection, and more importantly, that takes time. I've come to appreciate these periods of art block because it's my body's way of telling me, mate, you gotta slow down. It may not feel like it, but it's a long life. And if you blink, you might miss it.
And you can really tell the detail in here. It's all poster paint, which is, oh my god, it's so incredible.
Let's talk about what you need to learn how to draw in order to be able to draw mechs and robots.
My A camera, which is the camera that I use most of the time. But then there's also this camera, which is the Sony ZV-1, and I use that as my second camera. And then there's also this one, which is my phone. It's the C camera. It's convenient to have. It's a phone.